Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about the season 2 finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It was called Hegemony. And a hegemony is a political, economic, and military predominance of one state over another state or other states. I'm not sure why they decided to call the episode that. At one point, April refers to the Gorn as a culture, as a hegemony, because I guess they have political, economic, and or military predominance as a state over other states. But the episode isn't about that aspect of the Gorn at all. So why they chose it for the title of the episode is beyond me. Anyway, as the episode starts, we get a log entry from Captain Patel, and she explains that the Cayuga is at Parnassus Beta, helping the non-Federation colony there with routine updates to inoculations and such, with the help of Nurse Chapel, who was aboard the Cayuga in the area to meet Dr. Corby. In a call with Pike, Pike says he's pleased not to be bursting into song every 10 minutes when Patel asks how he's doing, but the call loses signal as a shuttle crash lands and a giant Gorn ship arrives behind it. Enterprise then receives a distress call from Captain Patel, so Pike takes the Enterprise to Parnassus Beta, with orders from April not to exacerbate a situation between the Federation and the Gorn, which at this point has only attacked a non-Federation colony outside the Federation's jurisdiction. When Enterprise gets there, it finds the Cayuga all but destroyed and all of their sensors and transporters and communication blocked, just as a Gorn hunter ship shows up. Starfleet sends Enterprise an image that was sent to it by the Gorn, which depicts a demarcation line between space that the Gorn currently occupy at the moment, which includes the location of what's left of the Cayuga, and the space where Enterprise is, which the Gorn have told Starfleet they don't want the Federation to cross, along with orders to, in fact, not cross it. Pike, of course, plans to cross it, and after telling his command crew that he wouldn't order anyone to come with him, they all volunteer to go, including Sam Kirk. Pike indeed takes some volunteers after showing them some special tech that he has beamed into the ready room via internal transporters, which Starfleet has provided its starships with in case of a Gorn encounter. And after Ortega suggests that how they can get a shuttle to the surface of the planet without being seen or detected by the Gorn is to fly a shuttle on thrusters through the debris field from the Cayuga, which Ortega agrees to do, they set out to get to the surface of the planet. After the shuttle makes it to the surface, after engaging the engines to avoid a crash at the very last second, the away team of Pike, Ortegas, the Doctor, La'an, and Sam Kirk make their way through the city in the dark and end up taking refuge in a barbershop when they encounter numerous inbound Gorn biosignatures. After holding up for a time, they head back out when they pick up a human biosignature, which would seem to have been sent from a device set up to trap some Gorn by a fellow Starfleet officer who comes out.
You're not Gorn. You shouldn't have walked into my Gorn trap.
And introduces himself, who turns out to be
Montgomery Scott, Lieutenant, Junior Grade.
Well, wasn't expecting that. Anyway, Scotty explains that he managed to get to Parnassus Beta in a shuttle that he rigged to look like a Gorn ship to the Gorn when he escaped from his ship, which is the Stardiver. He then leads the away team to a group of survivors hiding in a diner, including Captain Patel. Uhura and Pelion, meanwhile, come up with a plan to basically crash the saucer section of the Cayuga into the device on the planet's surface, which is blocking comms and transporter signals, so that the Gorn won't know that they're destroying it deliberately. Pike and Patel decide to go and try to get to Mr. Scott's shuttle, which obviously is the one that crashed in the beginning of the episode, so they can possibly use it to get some of the people off of the surface. And Scotty volunteers to go with them because they're not going to be able to unhook the device he used to hide from the Gorn without him. Spock then heads over via spacesuit to the Cayuga saucer section to place some retro rockets that would allow it to be maneuvered. Meanwhile, Nurse Chapel is indeed still alive aboard the saucer section, and she sees Enterprise through a window and tries to signal it with a flashlight, but it goes dead before she can get off an SOS. Then she sees Spock flying by, and after trying to get his attention but failing, she dons a spacesuit of her own, seemingly intent on jumping into space, but on her way, she encounters a very large Gorn. Meanwhile, on the Stardiver shuttle, Pike, Patel, and Scotty encounter a Gorn infant, which almost attacks Patel, but doesn't, choosing instead to run off. And when Pike tries to figure out why, she blows it off. But I think he realizes something is up. And I thought, oh my God, she's pregnant. And for some reason, the Gorn didn't want to attack a pregnant person. On the surface of the saucer section, Spock encounters the Gorn, the giant one, after successfully placing the retro rocket. Before he can shoot it, it whips the phaser out of his hand with his tail just as Chapel shows up, and also gets whipped by the tail. Spock attacks the Gorn bodily at that point and gets himself in a spot of danger, but while it's trying to kill him, Chapel makes for his phaser, which is floating in space, and manages to grab it and shoot the Gorn. Once it was distracted, Spock used a piece of debris to smash its helmet glass and expose it to the vacuum of space. It turns out that Captain Batel has been impregnated, but with Gorn eggs, not by Captain Pike, which is not optimal. Spock and Chapel escape the saucer section and float in space while watching it crash. As Pike tries to convince Batel not to take on a suicide mission to destroy the tower and to allow someone to try to help her with her situation, the saucer section crashes into the tower and comms and transporters are restored. Spock and Chapel are beamed aboard Enterprise, as are Pike, Batel, and Scotty. Others, however, including M'Benga, were beamed off the planet by the Gorn, who soon start attacking Enterprise. April orders the Enterprise to withdraw immediately. Before Pike can order Enterprise to comply with April's order, as the Gorn attack intensifies, the episode and the season ends. The best of both worlds part 1 does, y'all.
Mr. Worf. Fire.
I do not like this. I do not like cliffhangers in general. I certainly don't like them that last the period between seasons, as opposed to the period between weekly episodes of a season. So I'm quite annoyed. Anyway, my annoyance at that aside, I really liked this episode. I thought it was really, really good. They did a really good job with everything in this episode. It was exciting. It didn't have plot contrivances that didn't make sense. Everything made sense. It was intense, and it was just what good Star Trek should be. It felt very much like Next Gen or, DS9. So I really liked this episode. It was an excellent episode and an excellent season finale. Even better than last season's season finale, which I thought was pretty darn great. I do have a few notes. Some are good, some are bad. Let's start with the good. Chapel was wearing a more traditional Starfleet uniform, a tunic and black pants, versus the unitard, the white unitard she'd been wearing. So I thought that was cool, even though her shirt was still white, which, wasn't a thing in the original series era. Anyway, as for Mr. Scott showing up, so far I like this version of Scotty. But of course, now I'd have to go back and watch the original series episode Arenas to see if he doesn't seem to know what the Gorn are or not. But, this is one of the pitfalls of prequels and involving legacy characters. And it's why, on the one hand, I wish they wouldn't do it, but I was happy to see him. And hey, what do you know? The ship he was on is gone, and now he's aboard Enterprise. I wonder if that will continue in season 3. I thought the actor did a good job, too, of playing a young Scotty. I think it worked really well. So I was happy with that. The accent might not match exactly, and I suspect that this guy is an actual Scottish person, where, of course, James Doohan wasn't. But, what do they say? Close enough for government work. I like it so far. I'm liking it. So we'll have to see where it goes. One minor nitpick I have is that when the away team gets to the surface and they're walking through the city, they come across a device that they say is responsible for blocking communications. But then the one that the Enterprise crew destroys with the saucer section of the Cayuga is on the other side of the planet and is said to be the thing responsible for the communications block. So which is it? And for that matter, how did Captain Batel get her emergency signal out? Like, communications are blocked. Oh, this whole thing is here to prevent people from calling for help. She manages to call for help after her call with Pike gets cut off. So how that happened, I don't know. Another minor nitpick, Spock was still acting all emotional, and not only that, he was talking about it, which is very un-Vulcan. I'm guessing this was just the last vestiges of his pre-TOS self that we're going to see going forward on this series, given that last episode he said he decided to stop being so emotional. We'll have to see. I also didn't like that Spock gave a little speech before going out on the mission to install the booster rockets on the saucer section of the Cayuga, in which he talked about how he's the only one who can do it, which, while that might have been true, we really didn't need a rambling statement from him to establish it. Like, what? That was kind of dumb. Just send Spock. Who cares what the rationalization is? There's no reason that it couldn't be him, so why would you? I didn't like that. I thought it was unnecessary. Anyway, I find it interesting that the colony looked exactly like 20th century Earth, which they say in the dialogue was a deliberate choice by the colony. But it's funny because I wouldn't have thought anything of it, except for the fact that another YouTuber brought it to my attention that one of the reasons they probably changed the whole thing with Khan, where he's still a little kid in 2022 versus like the 60s, is because they didn't want to have to dress downtown Toronto and the extras to look like the story was taking place in the 60s, because it would have been more expensive. Which had me thinking that the reason this colony looks like 20th century Earth is because wherever they shot it obviously looked like 21st century Earth, and they didn't want to spend the money to make it look like an alien world in the 23rd century. Curious thing about that is that when they had these night sequences where they're all walking through this damage ravaged city with all kinds of fires and debris, not only in exteriors, but in the interior sets, which were also damaged and messed up, it occurred to me that that must have cost a lot of money unless they shot it on a backlot. In which case, I just would ask, why couldn't they have shot tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow in a backlot? The way they might have shot this episode in a backlot, at least partly, and the way they used to shoot cityscapes that looked like 20th century Earth on the original series. And whether they used a backlot for this episode or not, I still have that question. Why didn't they just shoot tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow on a backlot so that they didn't have to make a 60-year change to the continuity? It's maddening. Well, and the excuse they gave an excuse. Well, we wanted to do this because reason that doesn't make any sense. And that goes back to what I originally said when I first read what their reason was, which was that I don't think the reason they gave is the truth. I had thought at the time that they screwed something up and had to continue down a certain path and made up this excuse to cover it because it doesn't make any sense. But it may well be that it comes down to they didn't want to have to make downtown Toronto and the extras look like 1960s Toronto and people. And that would really annoy me if that were true. Anyway, I found it interesting. So they didn't do anything with Sybok after introducing him towards the end of last season. So now I'm forced to wonder, are we going to see him in the third season? Are they going to make us wait that long? Or did they just bring him up for no reason? Did they have a reason that they've since abandoned? Like what? It's bizarre. I still don't see that they did anything with Pelia. I didn't see in any of the episodes this season why they had to bring in Carol Kane to play this engineer character when they didn't really do anything with her. She was just like any other generic sort of chief engineer. She didn't have any special qualifications. She didn't do anything special. She could have been anybody. They could have cast anybody, but they brought in this Carol Kane, which I don't know, seems like a waste of her talents. She is a talented actress, though I don't always like her voice. So that bugged me a little bit because they made a big deal out of it. And she's kind of a big deal. And by that, I mean, she's not a nobody, but they didn't do anything significant with the character. Her lines could have been read by anyone, given by anyone. Anyway, nitpicks and issues aside, as I said, I did really like this episode. I thought it was a really great episode of Star Trek. I thought it worked very well as a season finale. It was impactful. I'm tickled by the introduction of Scotty, and I'm interested to see where that goes. Hopefully they won't screw it up. And the only other thing I want to say before I close out the video is that I'm disappointed in this season overall. As the season, was unfolding, I was remembering that I liked season 1 a lot. And I kept thinking, gee, I remember liking this show a lot better last season. What's going on? And so I went back and watched my review videos of the episodes of last season. And as I recalled, I did in fact like all the episodes last season. I had a bunch of nitpicks and I had a bunch of notes about things that I didn't like that they did over the course of the season. But my bottom line at the end of each review was that I liked every episode. Some I thought were fantastic. Episode 8, for example, the finale of last season, for example. But as I said, I was disappointed with this season because I can't say that I liked all the episodes. In my individual reviews, I probably said something like, so I like this episode okay for most of the episodes because that's how I felt about them. But the I like this episode okay level of quality is a lower level of quality than the episodes from last season, which I liked without the caveat of okay. It was okay. I liked it okay. I just liked them. And this season is not the same. I didn't think any of the episodes were bad. Certainly none of them were worse than bad, but they were meh. And I guess today the kids would say mid. They were mediocre. They were bland. There was nothing to them for the most part. And I'm saddened by that. This season, we had a premiere that was a nothing burger. It just was. Episode 2 was excellent. The con change aside, episode 3 was excellent. Episode 4 was decent. Episode 5 had good moments, but it wasn't great overall. It was uneven. The tonality was off. Episode 6 was okay, but very much rehash and nothing special. Just, generic hour of television, a generic hour of Star Trek. Episode 7 was fun, but there was nothing great about it. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It was great fun. It, continued the sort of tradition on Lower Decks of spoofing Star Trek, which I think is valid, and which I don't think is out of place in an episode of the live action show. So it was fun for me on that level because I've come to like Lower Decks quite a bit, but it was forgettable. There was nothing memorable about the episode in terms of character development, in terms of a gripping story that made you think about what it is to be human, which is what Star Trek is supposed to do, which is what any good media should do. So it was forgettable. Episode 8, as I said, was excellent. That was an 11 out of 10. Episode 9, the musical episode, was okay. I liked the music bits a lot, and some of the story points were good, but it wasn't anything great overall. So what we end up with for season 2 is 4 excellent episodes and 6 that were meh or mid to okay. And that's the majority of the season. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. Another way to look at it is that, it's 20 episodes, and that's what we used to get in one season of Star Trek and all other shows back before streaming became a thing. And if you look at it that way, they had at least 5 excellent episodes out of 20, 6 that were meh to okay or mid to okay, and 10 that were pretty good. So that's 10 pretty good and 4 excellence out of 20, which again still leaves the 6 meh or mid to okay episodes. So if you look at it that way, the whole thing is less disappointing. But the way it unfolded this season is you had kind of a clunker of an episode, a great episode, a great episode, 1 or 2 good episodes, a couple of clunker episodes, then a great episode. So it's just very uneven. And, even if you add the other 10, it's still uneven because all the good ones are up at the front, basically, or the majority of the really good ones are up at the front, the first half of the 20. So I don't know. They have to work on some stuff for season 3. And I thought I read that all the scripts are written, or a bunch of the scripts are written, and only production is being held up because of the actor strike. And it's not so much the pre-production or the writing that's being held up. So I don't know. These writer strikes often wreak havoc on TV shows where what they do end up putting out isn't great. So we'll have to see how it goes. I still can't believe that they Best of Both Worlds Part 1'd us. Not cool. Anyway, I will, of course, be back with another video soon, and I will be back to do recaps and reviews of season 3 once it debuts at some point in, I'm guessing, 2024. I'm getting out of here for now. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.